Roll call.
Director Chacon. Director Gedney.
Present.
Director Grajeda.
Present.
Director Hawkins.
Here.
Director Oscui.
Here.
Director Vasquez.
Present.
President Apodaca.
Here. Director Hawkins, would you please lead us in the invocation, and Director Grajeda, pledge of allegiance.
Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for all the blessings that you have bestowed upon each and every one of us. Thank you for the Memorial Day weekend that we got to celebrate to recognize all of our fallen soldiers. And please watch over the soldiers that are in active duty. Please watch over Central Basin and all the people that are here today. And in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Public comment and presentations.
We have no public comment cards yet. Maggie, do we have any? No public comment cards. We do have two presentations today. The first one's for Christopher Alvarez. Standing ovation for Chris. This way so everybody can see him. Central Basin needed to prepare an analysis of the impact of its 3 rate options on each of its 40 retail agencies for review and consideration of next year's budget and rates. Chris stepped up to perform a data analysis on potential cost impacts to the district's retail agency based on each of 3 different rate options and 4 different potable water charges. He quickly had an understanding of the rates and charges proposed and performed high-quality work and analyzed data presentation, easy to understand method. His dedication, hard work, and exceptional performance merit a standing ovation. By the way, I didn't want to make fun. These don't come with any monetary rewards. It's just a mental thank you for the work you've done. I don't know why we have people who don't stand up for them. And the second, Kelsey Coleman. This award is to recognize Kelsey Coleman for her leadership in taking on greater responsibility for the district and the Department of External Affairs. Kelsey already serves as the key point of contact for many members of our community through her management of the bottled water donation program, med inspection trips, and outreach requests. After the departure of the district's PIO, Kelsey took on a greater role in the department now responsible for managing the district's website. The website is a key area of engagement with the public and often serves as the first point of contact for those interested in the affairs of the district. Over the past several months, Kelsey oversaw the redesign of the website with a new vendor. This required Kelsey to take on a major project midstream, which included seeking feedback and information from all of our departments and facilitating transmission of information to the vendor to include the new website and make many of the changes herself. It was an extraordinary effort in a very short amount of time, and for that, we think you will deserve a standing ovation.
That concludes item 4, Metropolitan.
Excuse me, item 3, we have walk-on items.
Oh, walk-on items.
Yes, we have one walk-on item. Do you have a title for it? Mr. Palmer?
My understanding is Director Vasquez, because of a court hearing that will be held on June 7th, wishes to have the board discuss Vasquez versus Hughes, Los Angeles Superior Court case number BC 658053.
Mr. Pellman, just for clarification, I'm not asking to discuss the matter, that case. I'm requesting the letter indicates that I'm requesting that the Central Basin provide legal defense. So that's what the discussion would be.
Right. The letter that she's referring to was dated May 18th, directed to an attorney in our firm, and it's referencing Government Code Section 825 and 995. And if the board decides to add this to the agenda, we can discuss this at the end of the agenda.
Thank you.
Point of clarification, is this in closed session or open session?
This is in open session. Thank you.
I didn't know we did legal matters in open session.
Well, the district is not a party to this lawsuit. That's already been adjudicated by a judge last week. So you can only discuss in closed session where the district is a party or is claimed to be a party.
Is it possible to interpret this that we could be a party to the lawsuit because of this request?
No, this request was received prior to the court hearing. This letter's also been responded to by our firm. The judge last week specifically granted our motions to quash the motion to have the district participate on the 7th as a party regarding the awarding of attorney's fees.
And the request that I would like to discuss is not this matter at this point. The request that I'm interested in discussing is a request for representation under Government Code Section 815.2, 825, 995, and also the errors and omissions policy that the Central Basin has. So in my time on this board, whenever a director has made a request to be represented by an attorney, that request has been discussed in closed session. And however, if at this point, Mr. Pellman, you decide that in this particular matter, for whatever reason, the request cannot be heard in closed session, then I'm okay with having the request heard in open session.
Okay.
However, I don't understand why this exception has been made in this matter. Thank you.
I'll repeat that last week, Judge Ralph Onkeiko in the Superior Court specifically determined and ruled that the district was not a party to the lawsuit.
At this point. But that's, again, as I mentioned, I'm not interested in discussing the nature of the lawsuit. I'm interested in discussing being represented, my request for representation. Thank you.
But again, point of clarification, is this going on as a discussion item or as an action item?
I believe the director's requested an action.
It's an action item.
Yes.
So this would be item 16, be new item 16 or 15A on the calendar right after the Finance Corporation and before the information in the closed session.
So in order to add it to the agenda, the board would have to vote affirmatively. There is no doubt that the issue is going to be, that the director wants to have addressed, will occur before the next board meeting of the district. The issue is whether or not the board wishes to discuss it at the end of the agenda.
Is there any objections on this?
I would think there needs to be a motion and a second in order to vote on it. Or do you just do a general?
No, there was going to be a motion to, but I want to find out from my colleagues, is there any objections or? Anyone? Any?
Is there a motion to add this to the agenda?
Absent a motion and a second, we can't add it to the agenda, so.
So where does it go from here if there's no?
I don't know, involved with this. Normally, in a situation like this, as a courtesy, it is added into discussion as held. Because this one came up so abruptly and may involve litigation, the directors may be reluctant to discuss it at this time. If the legal people think it's feasible, we could always have another board meeting, but it would seem easier to deal with it now one way or the other. I guess we're dealing with it by not having a motion and a second.
I would make a motion to consider it in closed session if it can be heard in closed session. That's it.
We can't do it in closed session.
Okay, then.
There's already been a ruling by the judge that the district is not a party.
Yet. The district has not been named as a party yet. Yes, you're right.
What's,
Yes.
Can we take a time out?
5 minutes.
Move on?
Okay.
So we just reconvene the meeting at this point, Director? You recessed it? Are you going to reconvene the meeting?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry.
They just.
Item 4.
Good morning, Directors. Just a couple of quick updates at the Metropolitan Water District. First of all, there's a disadvantaged community work group. Metropolitan had formed a member agency work group to discuss and develop potential options for a program to address certain areas such as a disadvantaged community program that are not utilizing the benefits of Metropolitan's current rebate incentive program. So the group did meet about a week ago. They focused on the current rebate programs and additional needs for retail agencies. They held their first meeting and will reconvene another meeting in the coming weeks. So we'll keep you updated as that program develops. With respect to regional storage, Metropolitan convened a meeting for member agencies to review their emergency storage criteria and to seek feedback on reevaluation of their emergency storage requirement. Central Basin plans to participate in this work group, and Metropolitan will be bringing back updated information for their board's consideration in September and December later this year. And then the last update regarding the California Water Fix, Metropolitan, together with Santa Clara Valley Water District and Zone 7 Water Agency, signed a formation agreement for the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Joint Powers Authority, also known as the DCA. And the California Department of Water Resources will provide oversight of this project through a newly formed Delta Conveyance Office, and upon completion of the project, DWR will ultimately assume ownership and operate the project facilities. So that's all I have for updates at Metropolitan. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions, anyone?
No. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Consent calendar, items 5 through 9. Does anyone have any concerns with any of those? If not, do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 10, agreement with CMM Management Company, 2017-10 for the project management for the Proposition 84 Getaway Cities Recycled Water Expansion.
Hello, good morning, Directors. This item relates to the Gateway Cities Expansion Project, which consists of 3 recycled water pipeline projects. As you're already aware, these are the 3 pipelines to serve the cities of Southgate, Linwood, and Bell Gardens. Project management, environmental requirements, and completion of all 3 pipeline designs is being funded through a California Proposition 84 grant program and Central Basin. The district does have an existing grant agreement with the Gateway Regional Water Management Joint Powers Authority, or GWMA. The funding breakdown is shown in the memo in Table 1. In addition, we have a slide for you today which provides additional details for project funding. $920,810.70 is the total amount of grant funding awarded. Of that amount, a little over $23,000 goes to the county for administration for the grant. The remaining grant funding of nearly $898,000 is passed through to the district for project expenditures. The district has agreed to fund a cost share in the amount of nearly $125,333, and this allows project expenditures to reach a grand total of $1,023,123. Paid to date is $939,154.38, and remaining funds are currently at $83,968.62. And as you can see from this slide, there is enough funding to cover additional costs for the agreement with MCM Management this item addresses this morning. The scope of work for MCM Management's existing contract is attached to your item as Exhibit A and includes handling of grant requirements such as reporting and coordinating the planning and design for all 3 pipelines. Recently, we received a letter from MCM at the beginning of April. This is attached as Exhibit B, requesting additional funding. And as MCM's letter states, there has been delays due to additional coordination that was needed as a result of design consultants not meeting their deliverable deadlines, and these were the deadlines set by the district, so to be clear, we are meeting grant deadlines. In addition to deliverable delays, the overall project has taken longer to complete than originally anticipated. The scope of work left to complete or to be paid is the first item, 2018 first quarter report, the preparation of a project completion report, and the grant closeout and Gateway Water Management Authority process. So this is most likely going to include an audit. MCM Management is requesting $14,400 additional funding, and these additional funds will be covered by Central Basin's cost share from district reserves. This item was presented to the Engineering Committee this month in May and was recommended to move forward to today's board meeting. And at this time, are there any questions before I address the recommended motion?
Director Bray, Chair. Remind me, Jackie, this additional cost, which almost doubles the original proposal from MCM from $22,500 to an additional $14,400, is this going to cost the district any more money out of our own pockets, or is this all grant funding?
For this particular portion, this is going to be covered by district cost share matching. So it will come from the district. But Desi has already explained to us that he does not plan on requesting any additional funding, that this should cover it for his scope.
And how did, remind me again, how did these costs, were these because of the cities weren't meeting their obligations?
No, it was the design consultants for the pipeline project.
They weren't meeting their obligations?
Not all of them, but one in particular.
I'm sorry, Jackie, when you say they were not meeting their obligations or the deliverables were late, how does that impact MCM's work?
For this one, it's additional coordination. He would have to reach out to them more frequently, set up more meetings with them, review what their, their progress more often.
It delayed also the overall deliverable package going in and required, there's going to be an additional package. I mean, we had planned on getting it done at a certain time. That would be a certain quarter. We do quarterly reports. Now it's moved into another quarterly report that's required. And now so the funds we use for the quarterly report that are now not available for the final reports at the end of that.
And MCM does the quarterly report?
Yeah.
Under Exhibit B, first task, project management, has gone up from $25,560 to $30,060. If I read the description, task 1, project management, include negotiations, meetings, community outreach, and related activities. And it's gone up to the tune of $5,000. And then procurement and management of professional services, that has gone up probably about $1,000. And if I read the description of procurement and management of professional services, that has to do with the initial RFP for design services. So by one of the designers being late in their submittals, how did it impact this particular task? This is way beyond the RFP process.
We did have additional procurement or cost increases for the design, which Desi did help us with. Those items we brought before the board as well. So say, for example, if we needed to increase West Yost's contract, he helped us with that too.
Okay. Now, the amount that you're requesting is $14,000, right? And change.
And some change.
But when I'm looking at Table 1 of Exhibit B, the increase is only about $6,000. So where's the balance?
Well, from my understanding from what he had given to us, the work that he had already completed only left about $1,500 left in his contract. So we still have to pay him for some work that's already been completed and then additional future work that has not yet to be completed.
But I'm looking at Exhibit B, which is a letter of April 4 that he did.
You know what? I'm going to go grab it. I don't have it in my hand. Let me go grab it.
It's right here, Jackie, I got it. This is it here.
Okay, and I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, please, Director?
Yes. Table 1, Exhibit B. That, it has 2 columns, actually 3, description of the tasks, the contract amount for each task, and the total work performed to date. And 2 items, task 1 and task 3, 3 items, and general project support, now you have exceeded the contract amount. But when you add it all up, it's about $5,000-$6,000, no more than that. But we're requesting an additional $14,500 or $14,000 and change. So where's the difference?
I can ask him to provide more detail on that. That would be very specific to come from
And I
Mr.
apologize,
Alvarez.
I was supposed to ask Desi to come here, and I forgot on Friday to do that. You would have been here.
Then the other issue is when I'm looking at the terms of the contract, one of the things that the letter mentions is that it's gone beyond the 9 months or whatnot. But the term of the contract was for 3 years. And there was no specific allotment of time for each task to be performed. So then that we can justify if one task exceeds that schedule, that there are going to be additional costs incurred. Having said that, if I look at 1.3, under the provision of contract 1.3B, it clearly states that compensation in excess of the contract price is first approved in writing by the district. So was it approved by the district in writing before he expended the additional amounts or not?
For this particular item, it was not.
So why did he not seek approval in writing as his contract specified?
I'm sorry, sir.
I have a question, Jackie. Thank you for this. As I go through the board memo on agenda item number 10, just to point out, under the procurement process, we identified that we requested a proposal from MCM for the project management work. Central Basin did not request competing proposals from other consulting firms because Central Basin's partners, the cities of Southgate, Linwood, and Bell Gardens, stipulated that MCM would be the best qualified consultant to do this work due to its prior involvement in preparing the grant application and the principal's vast knowledge of the background of the projects. So as I understand kind of the flow of events here, the reason we were delayed and we're getting this request at this time was because of one of the design consultants being late. So my question is, what controls were in place of when a design consultant was late on their proposal for them to not pay up this portion of the cost? It wasn't due to MCM, as I understand it, was due to this design consultant. Shouldn't they bear that burden? They were late.
It was, and again, this is probably not something, we've discussed the consultant who was late in the process that we went through to get him on track, et cetera, in the engineering committee quite a bit. He was late by months, and to the point where we almost replaced him.
And district staff did a very good job following up and was very dedicated and diligent.
And as was Desi in helping us on this and getting them squared away and on track on the thing. The issue of who is liable and stuff like that, it's very difficult in my experience. to get a consulting engineer with the impacts on other parties of their costs. You know, like if he takes additional attorney's fees to negotiate with or with different matters, it's difficult to hit them with it. So we did not look into charging them with the increased impacts of that. In retrospect, in negotiating, we might have been able to decrease it by that amount if we'd foreseen it. Desi's been working hard on this with us, and it's the nature of the project. We had 3 consultants, three cities to deal with, district staff to deal with, all the regulatory agencies to deal with, and particularly dealing with the gateway in the county in terms of getting the funding package in. So there's a lot of detail that as a project gets delayed, you have to do more reports, the thing gets more complicated, you have to explain why. So he put the time and effort in, I don't doubt that. Again, I'm sorry I didn't invite him here, he would have been able to give you more clear picture of exactly what cost more on it.
Kevin, quick question. Did the particular design engineer firm that we are referring to, did they ask for more money?
They have not.
Are they going to?
No, we've gotten all their deliverables so far, and they said they will not. And just to clarify, if I may, there is some funding left in the contract, and although Desi has completed the first quarter report, we haven't received an invoice for that, so I'm not sure if what's remaining is going to cover the cost for that as well, or where that line is divided, but we have not asked for those details, but we'll get those details for you.
The other thing, there was a question about whether or not this money comes out of district monies or the grant funds. And in actuality, the total project is actually under budget at this time. We have an obligation to put in up to a certain amount. I believe it was a ratio type thing. In other words, we would put it, 89% came from the grant, 11% from us. That's normally the way you manage this. So we have submitted for more than 89%, so to speak. So that's why this percent would actually come out of our money, but it's still within the original contract, if that makes sense. We've actually requested grant money that's about 92 or 3%.
Right, it's about at $800,000.
Of what it is. So this will actually be a required amount. Whether we put it in early or now, it's still part of our required. We're not over on our budget or over on our allocation.
Kevin, was this truly an issue for the design engineer, or was it a problem with the design engineer and the city?
The city was complicated, was our biggest city, but this was a design engineer issue, strictly a performance on it. I had to mix it with another city. Now this was strictly performance.
And again, who chose the design engineers?
The city did, in this particular case. They were adamant to use this particular firm. If I remember correctly.
That's totally correct.
Are there any more questions?
Questions?
Should I go ahead and read the recommended motion?
Questions, but I have my calculations. Look, I don't know what the 14,400 is for. I can't account for that. All I can account for is the additional cost overruns, let's call it that. Under 3 tasks, task 1, task 3, and task 5. And when I add it all up, it's $6,020, 6020. I don't have any problems approving that, but I don't know what the 14,400 is. I mean, if it comes back later, I won't have any issue either, but I cannot do the accounting right now. So I don't want to authorize something that I don't know what it is.
Jackie, is this something that can we take up next month, take it through committee again and take it up next month and get it squared away?
We can do that.
Okay, now let's.
Yeah, we can pay him on what he's asking for, the additional amounts.
Yeah, we're okay with that.
Yeah,
we're okay with that, and what we'll do is we'll bring it back through committee and to the board with a more refined scope on this and a better explanation.
You know, what we need to know is that this is the money that we have expended so far, and this is how much more is going to be projected to be expended. The total cost is going to be this much.
Okay, we can do that for sure.
Thank you.
So this will be tabled?
Yeah, tabled on next month. We'll take it back to committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Item 11, consideration to take a position on legislative bills.
Alrighty, good morning, directors. So I did want to give you an update on this item. So just briefly, I'll be taking this item off, and reason being is we did provide a recommendation at the committee level, but upon further review, this bill, when we looked at it late last week, has actually been held in committee. So, and if you look at the legislative calendar, anything that's been held in committee as of this date has very likelihood of moving forward this year. Some context as to this bill was, this was a bill that would have provided an extension of 5 years with regards to tax exemptions for folks who are participants or receive a tax rebate for installation of water conservation devices or turf removal, actually. So just wanted to give you that update. Unless there are any questions, we can revisit this issue in the future if it's proposed as legislation in the next session.
Sounds good.
Just real quick, I know of a lot of people that want this. Why would the committee hold it up?
Probably fiscal impacts. The fiscal impact to the state is actually minimal. It's $150,000, but I can look into further and find out if there was an additional reason. But you're right, there's a lot of support for the idea of it. But unfortunately, as of late last week, when it passed committee deadline for any bills that have a fiscal impact, it was held.
And there's also a surplus of billions of dollars in the state coffers. So, okay. Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you, directors.
Thank you. Item 12, consideration and approval of general election resolution number 65-18-954 and 05-18-955 to render election services.
Good morning, directors. The county Registrar Recorder's Office has notified us that there will be a November 6, 2018 election this year. And part of this process requires the district to file a resolution with the County Board of Supervisors requesting that they permit the County Registrar Recorder County Clerk's Office to render election services and place this on the ballot. So this year, the scheduled elections are for Division 2 and Division 3. Additionally, last month, the board did approve calling for a special election to fill the vacancy that was created in Division 1. So before you are two resolutions. Resolution 518-954 are for Division 2 and Division 3, and Resolution 518-955 are for Division 1. So it is before you for your consideration, unless you have any questions.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve both items.
Have a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Thank you, directors.
Thank you. Item 13, consideration of Central Basin Municipal Water District draft fiscal year 2018-2019 budget.
Good morning, Mr. President, Board of Directors. Before you today is the draft fiscal year 18-19 budget. As is the custom in the prior year, the board adopted the budget in May to help purveyors with their budgets. So they usually pass in May and June. So that is hopefully where we're going today, that the board adopts a fiscal 18-19 budget. Some of the reasons for our current financial situation are listed. We discussed this at the May 10th board meeting. And just as a review, this is a draft budget. We have continued to make revisions since May 10th, when we presented a 117 DCR, or debt coverage ratio. So currently we're at 118. As you're aware, the financial advisor here in the audience with us for the next agenda items and this item is recommending 125% DCR. We're currently at 118. We also want to mention that the annual Moody's surveillance is coming up later this week, and they too desire a stronger DCR. Here are some of the...
Stronger than 117?
Correct, 125-ish or higher. Here are some of the meetings that we've had to date discussing the budget. We've included 2 from May, both the board workshop on May 10th and the purveyors meeting on May 16th. From April of 17 to approximately April of 18, we had about 1.8 million of budget cuts that the board adopted. So to back up to this last meeting, the board adopted 2 additional cuts listed on this slide. And the board decided to bring back 3 additional items for this meeting related to the handling fee on Met pass-through charges for RTS and capacity, potential elimination of the bottled water program, and modifying director travel allowances. And we'll discuss these toward the end of this presentation. Some of the items that we've changed toward the budget in this fiscal year since the first part of the presentation in January, we had a resignation of one of our directors that increased the election costs by $230,000 to approximately $700,000. We've revised some sales projection volumes for both potable and replenishment. 3 positions are eliminated in the proposed budget, and a few other items is listed below. Here's a summary of detailed expenditures in the budget. Just thought I would highlight a few items. In the proposed budget is a 20% reduction in salary and benefits to $2.8 million. If you see, that was number 1. Number 3 is the letter of credit. We're budgeting $225,000 for the full year. If you look down on item number 8, recycled water cost is $530,000 payable to the LA County sanitation districts. And number 16, I also wanted to highlight the unfunded pension liability payment of approximately $370,000. As you know, that increases to approximately $750,000 over the next 3-4 years. So if we go a little bit into the specific numbers, here's an expense summary, part of our expenditures, and you can see about a $400,000 increase from 18's forecast, $9.6 million, to the 19 budget of $10.0 million. That's almost all accounted for in the first line, administration and board services. As I mentioned, that $700,000 increase in election expenses. If you go to review the pie chart of the proposed budget, in the top left you can see recycled operations and other outsourcing is 31%. If you look toward the middle on the right, wages and benefits is at 24%. And one other item I want to highlight is the principal and unfunded pension payments. Toward the bottom, a little bit to the left, that is at 3%. Normally that would be more, but as the board previously adopted the defeasance or prepayment of $1.5 million in debt service principal, that's reduced that amount to 3% in the proposed 18-19 budget. If you look to the 5-year projection of expenses, bless you. You can see in 19, skip a column to 21 and skip another column to 2023. Those 3 years, the projected expenses are exceeding $10 million, mostly due to the period in that time period of $2.5 million of election expenses. The positions are 3 in 19, 3 in 21, and 4 in 23. If you look at 2020 and 2022, those are in the mid $9 million range because of that lack of election expenses. If you look at the expenditure summary, the major item of note is the second line, COPs, principal payments for our debt, you can see there's not an amount in 2019, as the note says, 1.5 million is prepaid or defeased, paid in the current fiscal year 2019 and not paid in 2019 as a one-time option. The board, like I said, adopted that previously. Here's an overall expenses summary. Expenses and expenditures, principal and capital in total go from 12.4 million to 11.4. The two main drivers there are the 700,000 increase in election costs and the 1.5 million decrease in principal. So as we move on to revenue, we discussed some options. In January, option 1 and 2 were presented. Option 3 was requested by purveyors that had no increases in rates. And option 4 is the most viable option. It's the recommended option with necessary rate increases and other cuts to expenses. As option 1 is discussed, that pretty much is the fixed meter charge, a new charge of about $3.50 per meter. That raises 1.1 million of revenue. That was option 1. Option 2, instead of having that revenue about 1.1 million in a new fixed meter charge, that would increase rather in option 2, the potable administrative surcharge about 65%. That equates to also 1.1 in potential revenue. Those two options were not deemed viable. Option number 3, there's a lot of items on this list. I'll just highlight a few. It doesn't allow for the financial restructuring, doesn't meet the DCR, implements all the proposed director and employee cuts from January, and uses reserves to finance this budget. Overall conclusion, it's not a viable option. Albert, I'm having a hard time. Can you, thank you. So option number 4, it incorporates the proposed expense reductions and budget cuts to date. Also implements necessary rate increases. We'll talk about those percentages in the succeeding slides. There is some wheeling revenue for WRD, and also the existing per CFS water meter service charge increases $225,000, or approximately 35%. Overall, conclusion is it's a compromise and most viable option. So going to draft rates, if you look at the first line on the MET rate, it increases approximately 3.4%. The second line is the existing Central Basin administrative surcharge for potable. That increases 19.8% from 113 to 135. And the third line, the overall potable water rate, increases 5.1. So if you look at the first line again, 3.4% is MET's overall increase. If you look at the second line, that's a 19.8%, but on the overall rate, it's that 5.1 minus the 3.4, so it represents a 1.7% overall rate increase to get to the 5.1 overall rate increase. Recycled water rates increase 4%, and like I mentioned, a 35% increase in the existing water meter service charge per CFS. So if you go to the overall budget summary, option number 4 is at the far right. Currently, we're at 118, like we said, at the DCR, 118%. Financial advisor is recommending 125. There's still a little bit more to do. That brings us to further board action. This is my last slide, and then Kevin's going to come up. To meet the 125 DCR, $243,000 of either increased revenue or decreased expenses is recommended.
Yeah, but when I raised my hand, just. As you recall, we had, well, first of all, the board had requested at the last workshop that we look at the impacts of each of these rates on each of our agencies. So, Albert, if you could click to the next slide. The next two slides show that this was, and I apologize, there was a glitch last week in our systems. We had tried to send it out, it was actually 2 weeks ago, we tried to send it out on a Thursday at noon. It didn't go out till Monday evening because of all things, a spam filter on outgoing, which prohibit us from sending out any distribution of larger than 100, and it happened to be 102 people on our distribution to the purveyors. But that went out Monday. And that'll show you this. This shows you the items, agencies that start with B through M. And as you can see, for the four options, the variations can be extreme. And on others, it's relatively small. For Bell Gardens, it goes from 25 to 31 option. Whereas on the other hand, if you go to City of Cerritos, it doubles. Option current rates are 65. Estimated option 4 is 83,000, and the fixed charge option 1 would be 122,000. Downey, it would triple. The current rate for Downey is 41,000. Would go up to 56 on option 4, but 126. So each agency varies depending upon much water it uses, how many connections it has in each of the alternatives. In anything like this, there are winners and losers on each of the thing, and there's no optimum that you can say if this is a decision made on which is the lesser two evils when you get to a rate increase. Option 4, we believe, is a balanced. It raises less money from the agencies than the others because we have additional sources of income coming in, but it does leave us a little bit short. Which comes to the... Okay, did you give it? Okay, so go through the next one. Unless there's any questions on that. Was there any questions on the first two slides about how we calculated it or whatever? We did use the projected water use for next year, FY 2019, and we used the other statistics that we have for the districts. So if we go back, there were 3 items that were left unaddressed at the workshop. The first had to do with putting a handling fee on the pass-through. As you know, we have 2 charges that Metropolitan imposes every year. That is, we have adopted a policy of direct pass-through to the agencies. That's the readiness to serve and the capacity charge. Each of these are charges that, because of the nature of us having 40 agencies which use different amount of water and different histories, requires that we recalculate it, and in some cases actually have a different formula to do it. So there's a justification for a charge on it without going into the amount of the charge. The RTS and the capacity charge, if we put a 20% handling on them, would just about make up any deficit we have for to get to the 125 DCR. And again, just to stress why the DCR is important on us, these financial operations we're going through this year, the higher the DCR going in, together with the lockbox, will give a greater degree of credit or confidence by the credit community in our ability. It should return in lower interest rates on the issues and greater probability of success. So this is what we're proposing is the potential revenue increase would be a total of 144,000 on the RTS and 98,000 roughly on the capacity charge. So, any comments on any of the board on this item?
Kevin, how does that charge affect the various purveyors that are affected by it?
It increased their cost by 20%.
What costs?
The cost that they get for a capacity charge in RTS.
So give me an example. Santa Fe Springs.
Do you have that handy?
So I need to understand how that affects them. I just can't go 20% because you've got 20% here, and then in other areas you've got 35% on the meter charge.
Yeah.
So,
well, again, to do this, we've calculated it for each agency. We have the tables on that. If your charge was 100,000, it would be 120 after this was done. Now, you want to know how it affects each one. It'd be everyone that has a connection because the capacity charge is based upon peaking that we've used in the last 3 years, which actually is a 5-year because they skip a year. And the readiness to serve charge is based upon a rolling average of water. Met builds up based on the last 10 years as an accommodation to our member agencies who had built wells to get off of Met water. We do ours based on the last 4 years. Do we have that available, Rich?
We're going to try and get that exact calculation.
Isn't it on the...
But on the slide, it does show the overall difference.
but I thought this option didn't include this latest request. I thought this option, as we got it before, only included the other charges that we've seen to date. I didn't know it included this 20% increase.
Does this option include the 20% increase?
Option 4.
So option 4 on this slide for Santa Fe Springs is $498,000. At the current rate, the rates that we have in place is $411. So the difference between those two amounts, there's four different increases in their rates. First is the administrative surcharge for potable of about 19.8% that we discussed. There's also the existing CFS per meter water meter service charge, and then the two additional pass-throughs and the additional surcharge related to the C.
That doesn't answer the question. The question was on the RTA. We have that. Do we have for each of these options, we have the breakdown of the charges?
Does option 4 include this additional 20% proposal?
No. No, it doesn't.
Wait.
Option 4 in this table includes the 20% proposal?
Yes.
But the budget that they have before them doesn't?
The budgeted amount in the revenue does not.
Okay. When you have, in the data that we sent out to the agencies, it included the detailed analysis of each of the 4 alternatives. Do you have the one for option 4 handy? Yes, you do.
We're getting it.
Okay. In that option 4 that was sent out, you can see the actual impact of this. It was sent out to everybody.
So, once we get that, let's just use the example of Santa Fe Springs. There's roughly about $88,000 increase. As long as we can account for that $88,000 to see what it comprised of, which elements, I think we're going to be right. But we need to see that.
Yeah, and that should be in that, because when we sent it out, it showed for each one of the alternatives where the rates were increased and what the charges were for each one of those for each agency. Those are the subsequent ones. Can I see it? Sit down. Okay, so for option 4, for Santa Fe Springs, we show the 20% admin fee to be raising $55,000 from Santa Fe Springs. For option 1, which doesn't include...
So let's just take option 4.
I'm just going to compare it against it to see if make sure that's the right comparison, because option 1 didn't have any markup on it.
All right.
And option 1 shows that it doesn't show any markup. So this is a pure markup. No, it's not. This is the total charge for the RTS. Yeah. So the increase would be about $11,000 for our Santa Fe Springs. Their total cost is $55,000. If you take 20% less than that, it'd be about $44,000.
So, again, the answer to the question is, It is not included in the...
It is included in the calculations that were handed out of the cost impacts to everybody.
Okay.
It's not in the budget, but it was in the cost impacts.
Am I looking at that right now on the screen?
Yeah, what you're looking at on the screen includes the cost impacts of this. The actual impact to Santa Fe Springs of that charge is $11,000. The total charge to them is $55,800 roughly for the RTS admin fee. The capacity charge admin fee is, the gross is $37,000. The incremental amount therefore that was from the 20% charge would be about $31,000. So it'd be $6,000 would be the total markup for the 20%.
So the difference is $86,623.
That's the total. That's the total, and then 20% of that is the markup. So if you take 20% of that, it would be roughly $70,000 is the base cost, and $15,000 would be roughly the markup. In other words, if the base charge was $100,000, then the price you'd see on here would be $120,000.
Can someone tell me what is in 86,623? All the different elements. Because that when I'm comparing option number 4 to current rate, which is $411,580, the difference is $86,623. Can you just tell me what are the components of that?
The components would be the potable rate increase of about 20%. Dollar-wise, okay. Do you have the numbers?
There's 4 components.
Okay.
The first is the 20% handling fee on the capacity charge, and that's about $6,000 that we previously, Kevin previously mentioned. The RTS is approximately $9,000. Is the handling fee at 20%. The CFS, the existing CFS meter charge is approximately $9,000. And then the remainder would be the increase in 20%.
So small. And again, for each of these agencies, certain items are fixed because the metrics don't change, the RTS, the capacity charge, and the per meter charge. The volumetric is an estimate based upon projections that they've provided for FY19.
So I'm a little bit confused, Kevin and Andrew. I'm looking at, on the handout in the packet, page 107, the draft fiscal year 2018-2019 budget contains the following projected rates for option number 4. And it says, okay, the met rate of 1,050 current is going to go up by 3.4%.
Right.
Okay. Then it says potable water rate, we're looking at increasing that by 19.8%?
Correct.
Okay. So that'll go from 113 to 135.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Then it's saying, then it's saying, and we're only talking potable water right now. Okay.
That's correct.
Then it's saying Central Basin's water meter service charge, CFS/CSF, that's projected to go up by 35%.
Correct.
Okay. Where is this 20%? Is that in the 35% meter charge?
No, the 20% that we're talking about now is for the this is a new charge that is not in the budget at this time.
So it's not,
Not in the budget. It was in the cost allocation that was sent out. It was assumed just so we were at the maximum it could be to everybody. But it is not in the budget at that time because it's not been approved by the board.
it's not here.
Right.
Well, option 4 wasn't approved by the board either, but, so it's not here, but it is in this slide that's in front of me?
It's in the presentation of what we're asking the board to vote on right now, which is the 20% increase in the RTS and the capacity charge. In other words, the budget that we have right now is set to achieve a 118 debt coverage ratio. If the board approves it as it is,
The option 4 that I'm looking at,
Yeah.
Does not include 20%.
that's 118.
right.
Okay.
But in order to kick it up to 125,
You
you
need
have
the
to
other.
do the 20%.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what we're asking for here is the increase.
Okay, all right.
And I apologize for the confusion in that.
So then, when I'm going back to that little chart with all cities. So let's, again, take Santa Fe Springs, the difference for them is going to be the difference between currently what's option 4 and 411,580 plus the 20%.
Correct, and the on option 4, in the summary charge, we had included, again, we made an assumption that this was approved when we put this cost allocation
So
out.
this
Includes it.
summary includes the 20% and is different than the...
Exactly.
Okay.
So the costs on this chart here are about $250,000 higher than the budget at this time.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, anyone? Do I have a motion?
Could we read the recommended action, please?
That the board approves one of the following options to be effective July 1st, 2018. 1, implement a 20% handling fee on the readiness to serve charge and capacity charge, additional revenue of $242,130. 2, implement a fee of another amount, additional revenue to be determined. Or 3, maintain the current practice.
And the staff is recommending option 1.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. So
Could you go to the next
the information that went out to the purveyors, did that include 20%?
Yes, it did. It includes the 20%
But the
increase.
information also did the information also reflect this proposed budget of option 4 that I just read? Or did
It
I?
showed all of the options. And the information that went out to the agencies included all 4 options and the cost allocations. But in option 4, it included the 20%. And I don't know if it's in any of the other ones. Just in option 4.
I'm sorry to belabor the point. So 2 things went out. This breakdown of what the proposed increases were, along with that chart that showed how they were going to be affected. But in that chart, how they were going to be affected was an additional 20%.
Additional 20% only on the RTS and capacity charge.
Right, but an additional 20%.
Which it affected people who are only affected by that, which about half the agencies.
When was this information received by the agencies?
The last Tuesday.
Have you received any feedback from them?
None.
Anyone?
No comments.
Anybody indeed? I can't see everyone back there. I see Dr. Wen probably. He's kind of quiet. Did you receive the information, Dr. Wen?
Yeah, I got it last week, yes.
So no feedback to the Central Basin? I guess so. All right. Any of the other directors have any? You all represent city agencies?
Any questions? Nope.
Well, from my perspective, in the past, we've tried to get certain debt coverage percentages that we've kind of moved things around to try to achieve. And based on our history, it's always been difficult to achieve what we've said we were going to do. And I think it'd be great to set a goal of 119, 120, 126, whatever, but I'm concerned that this is a huge hit on those that pay these bills, because people are continuing to get away from buying imported water. And so we're going to constantly be back here raising rates again, substantially. I think we have to look at more cuts, and I think we may have to extend this increase over a number of years rather than doing it all in 1 year. At this point in time, I don't have a proposal for you, because this 20% is catching me off guard, because that's not what I was looking at.
This 20% is, again, on the RTS and the capacity charge to increase our debt coverage ratio from 118 to 125. That was the goal of that doing it. And if you recall, at the workshop on the 10th, you kept a couple of things in abeyance you wanted to have the full board discuss. This is one of them.
So were further cuts.
Yeah, and so were further cuts, and we've done cuts continually since we've started this process over a year ago. And the issue of further cuts, I think we had a discussion last time. There are no further cuts to be had in this budget as far as I'm concerned. This is what we need to survive next year to get through and do what the mission of the district is. Now, do we
What
make
is the mission of the district, Kevin?
What is the mission of the district? Representation in metropolitan and distribution of recycled water. And distribution of potable and replenishment water.
Representation of metropolitan, I don't understand that. I think the mission of the district is to provide important water to those that need it and desire it. But I don't understand what you mean by representation to Metropolitan Water District.
Regardless of whether we distribute water or not, and their agents actually have this problem they are members of Met. Just the fact that you are in Metropolitan, have the ability of a backup supply when you want it, adds tremendous value to the property in the area. So whether you take water or not, the value of the district is the representation at Metropolitan. If you did not have the representation, you didn't have a backup supply of water in this area, you would not, I won't go into the detail, but, so when I say representation, that includes the purchase and sale and distribution of water that they make available at the different rates and types. And you have access to the conservation and the funding that they do for local projects. So I put it all in the tenor of representation, But again, we've had this discussion too. We've had a strategic plan that went out. We did a whole bunch of work on it. The real question now is the difference between a DCR of 118 and 125, and what is it worth? And in this case here, our DCR at the end of this year, we're projecting is going to be 105, missing it by 10 points. I would have liked to have this factor safety in last year's budget, because then we could have come in at the DCR. But this is a recommendation of the financial consultants to help us get the best possible rate. And why is that important? The best rate we get also translates into savings for the folks in this area. So,
Kevin, I'm sorry, the amount that the 20% is going to generate is how much again?
240,000 roughly is.
There are some items that, as proposed savings items, that either the board at the time that we had the workshop didn't have enough members present so that we can discuss them further, or there were things in the past that the board didn't vote for them.
We have two more coming up today.
Okay.
We have the director's travel allowance and the bottled water program is two. But again, those two together don't add up to the amount of this. This one in itself.
Are there other things that the board didn't go for them?
Are there other things?
Right. Like the health account, right?
Yeah.
How much was in that?
Yeah. But these are the ones that the board requested that we bring back at this time.
Understood. Look, I've said this before. I don't have any issues with dealing with the reality and understanding that hitting the 125% is important and vital. But what I have a problem with is when we have tangible saving opportunities that is going to minimize the impact to our purveyors. Either we did not consider them seriously, or we just let them go because of whatever reasons. But in good conscience, I cannot make a motion for your recommended option, which conceptually I agree with, without revisiting those issues.
No.
Because the purveyor said very, very carefully and very systematically and continuously that they want to see cuts. They want to see savings before any additional charges. And I want to make sure that when I go back to them, I'll say, we have exhausted all options for savings.
And Director, as you recall, starting in January with the workshop, when we teed up a dozen different cuts.
Yes.
And the board made a motion, we brought them back. We're bringing them back again for a third time to discuss. The ones that we're bringing back this time are the three that the board requested at the meeting on May 10th, which is this charge here, the bottled water program, and the director's travel. With regard to the, we did have the health benefits and the, what is it?
Car allowance.
The car allowance, but there was, and we also had in the health benefits, there was the HRA account.
Right.
Because this health program that we're going into saves us $110,000, but requires a greater payment on the part of the employees, we thought it'd be best not to touch the HRA account at this time till we have experience with it.
So that was no viable option then?
Not at this time. It's viable, but not at this time. There are also other options that we may implement next year or the year after as we go through this process. And I think the same thing we talked about, employees paying for a portion of their retirement account, et cetera. Those are things that require careful analysis and coordination with all the other benefits. We had agreed, I believe, on the 10th that we would address these at a workshop in first quarter of next year, was it? Or I thought we were going to do a workshop on cost containment again, or about the benefits. I guess was the total on the benefits at that time, if I recall.
Yep. Well, let's discuss the savings then.
Yeah.
Can we?
On which one?
Concurrence on that? The ones that are on the board right now?
Well, the other, if we just go on to the next item, which is eliminate the bottled water program. Again, this is one, it's cost us an average of $18,000 over the last year. It is frankly well received, at least at the working level. We get numerous requests for the bottled water. Down at Contract Cities, I had a number of people come up and compliment us on the program, which surprised me. But it's $18,000 a year, and it's an unusual program. Not every agency has a program. So that's something that, again, go to the next. If the board chooses, we can eliminate the bottled water program, reduce it, or remain staying status quo.
My recommendation is to do option 2. I mean, you still have a presence, you've delivered the message, but you're saving cost.
So,
I think to get to where we want to go, I would second that motion for option 2.
okay. And option 2 is to reduce the limit to 5 cases per event, and it seems like a good compromise.
You're basically cutting the program in half, is that correct?
Yeah.
Approximately?
Yeah. Because there are some that are not necessarily event-driven. We have some that are for emergency situations, or some that are smaller amounts anyway. So I guess we have a motion and a second for option 2. Director Apodaca, do you want to?
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No?
President Apodaca?
No.
Okay. Let's go to
I
item-
do want to make a comment about this particular item. I believe that this is a very important program for our agency. We have drastically reduced, even the purveyors, I think when they come in, they would like to have a bottle of water to drink for lunch. I think what I did notice is that now we've gotten rid of, we don't even provide a soft drink for our purveyors anymore. This program really helps us get the word out about who we are and what we do. I was in the city of Southgate for their Memorial Day event. The agency donated 15 cases of bottled water. I ended up purchasing out of my own pocket, which is not uncommon, and what I will do is I will begin to document all of the bottled water donations that I make, because I do buy cases, and Kevin has been a witness to that. When the city of Linwood had their last, 2 years ago, their National Night Out, Central Basin donated 15 cases, and I purchased an additional 10 cases. I believe this is a very important part of our program. I don't mind making my own personal donation out of my pocket. It's where a lot of the salary that I get here at Central Basin goes. It goes directly back into the community, whether it's through bottled water donations or now sponsorship of other programs. But I believe, we have cut significantly. We've done a lot of work in the area of cutting, and we've cut all of our education programs, which, in my opinion, are a very important part of what we do. I understand that the purveyors don't necessarily see our education programs as important, and that's okay. It's okay to agree to disagree. I just have to disagree on this one. I believe that it's very important, and I don't think we should get rid of it.
The motion fails.
Thank you.
The next item that the board was going to consider is modified director's travel allowance.
Kevin, before you go there, just understand that these programs, no one's questioning whether or not these programs are necessary or good. But if you need these programs and you also need the purveyors to increase rates, then remove that amount of cost from your increase rate ask. So lower it by that amount. Because our revenues are down. They're going to continue to drop. We cannot do business as we did in the past. That's reality right now. We cannot do that. And we cannot just keep raising rates 15, 20, 35% every year because purchases are dropping. We've got to look at a new paradigm. That's the bottom line. It's not that we want to take all these programs away. We just can't afford them. But reduce your ask. Lower it by that amount. Don't ask for $242,000. You ask for less, in my opinion.
Okay. Our next item was to modify director's travel allowance. Historically, the director's travel allowance was $5,000. We raised it to $7,000 a couple of years ago because of the number of events. This includes attendance at approved conferences, which includes Aqua, Contract Cities, Independent Cities, Urban Water Institute, Water Reuse Association, and others. The total theoretical cost is about $5,000. In other words, we budget $40,000 for the year because not everybody uses all of the money. Our proposal is to budget this year to cut it in half and authorize $3,500 per director, which would come out to a savings of reduce the budget to $24,000 and save $24,000.
Excuse me, Kevin, wasn't there a discussion when we met for the workshop of taking the current of $7,000 back to the old rate of $5,000?
There was, and again, this is what was left on the table, but that is an option to go back to $5,000. And again, $5,000 is what is average used, so taking it back to $5,000 would certainly be a good potential gesture. Would not.
I would make the motion for that then. I don't know how that would, instead of it being option 1 or option...
It would be option 2 to select another amount.
And that would be to take it back to where it was when, how many years ago?
2 years ago.
2 years ago, which was $5,000 each?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a second, Director? Please.
Second.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
No.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Okay, this motion also fails.
Yeah, I do want to make a comment about this. I think it's real easy to call it director travel. These conferences are very important to our agency. And although I don't use the $7,000 that's allotted, I believe that my colleagues have a responsibility to attend some of these conferences and learn about the issues that are impacting us not only locally but across the state. I went to the Aqua Conference in Washington, D.C. And advocated on behalf of the Central Basin for funding on recycled water. We talked about storage. All of these issues are very, very important to our agency, and I just feel it's a part of the job that you take on when you decide that you want to be a representative on this board. Do I like going to Washington, D.C. and taking a 5-hour flight and having to adjust physically to the time change and coming back, within 2 or 3 days? I don't necessarily enjoy doing that. I do it because it's a part of my job as a director, and I really feel that each of the directors that are sitting here have an obligation to do that, and I don't support eliminating this because it reduces and limits the job that each of the directors has to do on this board.
Director Vasquez, I apologize. There may have been a misunderstanding. The proposal was to reduce it to 5,000, not to eliminate it. And at 5,000...
I understand.
Yeah, okay, because at 5,000 was what it was historically. Many other agencies that have this have a pool thing where you have to go to the board each time. And what many will do in a case like ours, if you've been going and attending conferences for the good of the district and you're over your budget, you go back to the board and request it, and usually we can do a reallocation, with the director who's under through the board process. So I thought the decision to reduce it to 5 was a compromise approach that would...
Well, I'd like to piggyback on what she just said. We just went to contract cities, and I got a chance to speak to several of my general managers, city managers rather, and a lot of the elected officials. And when I explained what we were going through with this budget and cuts and all this, and they agreed. They said, we've just had to do the same thing. We had redevelopment taken away from us. We've had to raise taxes because of all the services. And so they understood what we were going through. And a lot of their comments was, well, do the best you can. We know what you're going through, and we've just been through the same thing. So, without this travel to go to these different events where you can sit down and talk to these people on a casual basis on overall to tell them where we're coming from, they don't typically know what. They're looking at a balance sheet and that's it, and they don't know what we're actually going through. And I had a chance to talk to several of them, and they'd just gone through the same thing.
So, Director, you're saying that the cities you talked to said they were okay with the rate increases we're proposing?
I say that again?
You're saying that the cities you spoke to were okay with the rate increases we're proposing?
Yes, we talked about item number 4, and they said, and I actually got a couple of agreements on item 4. They said they were for, they could go along with item 4.
To make it easier, would you please tell us which cities those were? That they agreed already to it?
I don't know what he said.
He wanted to know if you wanted to name which cities you spoke to that agreed to it.
Well, I don't want to put him on the spot, but I did talk to several of them.
No, when you mentioned we wanted them ahead of time. I think you're misunderstanding the proposal that Director Grajeda put out, because he was putting to reduce it to 5,000, not to eliminate it, and yet directors have not even been using 5,000 per. In other words, we've only been using an average of 4,000 per so far, so it was a very generous.
Well, that's with me. I've cut mine down to one. Probably the contract cities is probably the only one I go to now. Because
then why not reduce it to 5,000 at least?
Well, I'd like to go to more, but there just hadn't been the money. Now, if we go down again, we won't go to any.
The
we won't have enough money.
7,000.
Again,
What difference does it make if it's not being spent? If it's not being spent, then the money is still in the bank account of the Central Basin, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, so what's the difference?
But there was a nice, okay. Actually, Director Grajeda teed up a very nice opportunity for you folks to show the spirit that we're looking for to try and get this budget passed in making a cut that is symbolic, at least. I mean, that's what we're asked to do here, and that's why Director Apodaca understood it. And we,
In my
none of you have
opinion-
exceeded the 7,000. None of you exceeded
Right.
5,000.
In my opinion, this board has bent over backwards to support all of the cuts that, most of the cuts that the purveyors have proposed, including the directors that represent the purveyor community. And these are not the only cuts that have been made. When I first came on this board, we drastically cut the legal expenditures. We also eliminated the contract for one of the engineering firms that had 4 engineers on staff. There have been many cuts. Most of the board members that are here actually agreed to put a limit on travel. So there has been a lot of cuts. It's, as I said, it's okay to agree to disagree. The purveyors may not get everything that they want, and the directors that are elected may not get everything that we want either. But I do firmly believe that we have made every effort. Those of us that are the elected directors have made every effort, including changing the composition of the board, to work with the purveyor community on these issues. And just because we may not agree on, 2 or 3 or 4, I think it might be 3 or 4 issues, it's okay. It's okay for that. We'll just have to figure out how we're going to resolve this budget issue through other adjustments in the budget. And that'll be a process. That's why this is called a draft budget.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Director, it is the 28th of May, and we are running out of, 29th of May, we're running out of time to do adjustments and have a budget. Yes, you're the president.
What is the allotment for each director?
Right now? Actually, this year was 3,500. We cut it in half in a prior budget cuts. But the budget for next year has 7,000 in it, which is per our guidelines.
I personally would, any travel I would be allowed, I'd like to turn that back in. I've been to every function that's been here for 18 years, so I don't need that.
And again, in the budget, we budgeted 28,000 because that was the number that, we budgeted 40,000 because that's the number that's been used, under 5,000 by each employee with a safety factor, so.
Kevin, if you would, let me take a question here. Our current budget's $28,000, right? Okay, how much of that have we spent to date?
Well, our current budget, I don't know exactly what it is now, what we've spent to date. Do you have that? On the specific item, yeah, okay. He'll look it up for us.
While Andrew is looking, I don't discount the fact that these conferences are important, but as I've suggested in the past, these are extraordinary times. And when you have a budget shortfall, all the cities that are sitting in here, all the agencies that are sitting in here, they know this. When they go through a budget process, which one is a line item that goes first? Travel expenses. And we're not saying that these things are going to be permanent. We are saying we have to take a look at them year after year. The other thing, while Andrew is looking for the number, everyone who does a budget every year, they know this. You go to the expenditure to date, and we are close enough to the end of the year, we know what the expenditure to date is. You pick that number, and for the following year, you cap your budget at that number. Because you know what? You didn't spend it. So if you didn't spend it, you didn't need it.
Yeah.
Director, I didn't spend mine.
I know
4 years.
Actually, no director has been over their travel budget, as I recall.
What is that, travel to your house?
May, do you keep track of that? But I don't believe any has exceeded their travel.
Not exceeded.
Yeah, none of the directors have exceeded their travel budget. Did you find it?
15,000 so far, and does not include the contract cities.
So I had another 5 for that. We'll have spent 20,000 this year.
15,000 so far, and the directors, some 2 directors want to hold it at 7,000 per.
We have to add the contract cities that was 3
you said
directors, so say
5,000, right?
20,000. 20,000, yeah.
So,
Why don't we cap it at 20?
yeah, so one of the optics, one of the things that could be seen is, we're stopping it right now, that's your budget, boom, done. The purveyors in this room, they would understand that. They might not all agree, and I'm tired of singling out purveyors because of, spending on some minor issues here, but they would say, okay, fine, you cut one thing. That has not occurred at this meeting. That has not occurred. So if you want to have the correct optics for purveyors, you need to make statements beyond, I think we're being fair.
I made my comment because my cities of Whittier don't normally attend because of cost factor, and Santa Fe Springs and Norwalk. So I know they would concur with what I'm
So if I could summarize the comments of the directors, the conferences are needed, valued, and serve a useful purpose, but they are an expense that we have to control in the best means possible. Our history shows us that are expended this year, which is a tight year, and we had very few directors. None attended Aqua. I believe Director Vasquez went on the Met costs. So we did a very good job of holding costs this year. We held it down to $20,000. The staff recommendation would have given you $24,000, I guess, and the recommendation from Director Grajeda would give the $40,000 for the board, $5,000 each. Again, does the board wish to reconsider that and vote for the $5,000 item?
Well, I'm actually withdrawing my motion. It makes no sense. I'm sorry, Kevin. It makes no sense. The current board has done a very good job this year of watching their pennies. And it makes no sense to increase it going forward when we're going to have less revenue. And I did it as a gesture. It wasn't picked up. I withdraw my motion.
Okay, so the motions are on the...
At this point, they've already voted on it, so.
Yeah, okay, then we can just recap, go back to the first item. We had 3 items that the board asked us to bring back. The only one that we still have not voted on is place the handling fee on the Met pass-through stuff to take us to a 1.25 debt coverage ratio.
Well, on this one, I don't think we have a lot of choices here. We have an elephant in the room, which is the bond people, and if they're going to require 125, and it takes this to get to the 125, what other choices do we have?
I think the other choices are some of the things we just voted on.
They're not even a percentage.
But it adds up.
No, they don't even add up to a percentage of what we're talking about. That's like looking at pennies when we should be looking at dollars. These are the big dollars. And if we're going to get to 1.25, which we should be even higher than that, we're going to have to do this. We don't have any other choice.
Maybe they do not add up too much when you're comparing it to the 20% increase, but it shows the intent. And it shows that we're listening to the purveyors. It's the gesture. It's the intent.
So the recommended action here is that the board implement a 20% handling fee on the readiness to serve charge and the capacity charge. What's the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to adopt a staff recommendation of option number 1, the 20% handling and readiness service charge.
I'll second that.
Director Chacon? Director Getty?
No.
Director Grajeda?
No.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
No.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
No.
Okay. So then we come to wrap up in the budget. Can we have a brief recess?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, I was hoping we can revisit a couple of the items. And first, as we go through the overall budget, again, we still have an issue of having to have a DCR that is high enough to meet our financial needs at a time when we're going to the market with some very important documents. So I don't know which item would go first. I would like to see if we could revisit the director's travel. We've looked at it, and the sum of the travel for the last 3 years has been roughly $20,000 per year for each of the last 3 years. That's just what the directors have spent. So, based on that, is there a proposal for?
Okay, I'll make the motion that we go back to 5,000 per year for this year.
No, I'm hearing 20,000, which divided by 5, that's 4,000. That's 20,000 cap.
That assumes that none of the three ever use any travel.
No, we haven't, and we're not going to do that.
But your committee, okay, you just have new directors coming in next year, but.
Well, when they come in, they have to deal with the 20,000.
So the motion is for 4,000 for each of the elected directors and none for the appointed directors?
Yeah.
Say that again.
The motion is for 4,000 for each of the elected directors and 0 for the appointed directors for travel and conference.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Which is how much less than the budget that we have this year?
It's identical, it's less than the budget we had, it's identical to the,
Not the expenditure, the budget.
The budget has 40, so you would reduce it by 20.
okay.
Okay. So cut it in half.
Yeah, okay. So there was a motion and a second.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Yes.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Second item, again, with regard to the bottled water, I didn't hear any proposal to change it. It is a small expenditure overall. The proposal was to possibly cut it to 5 cases per event. The general manager still has discretion to go over it on special occasions, and that which we've been doing. Is there any eagerness to revisit that?
You know, I suggest that we revisit that, bring it down to what the level that you suggested as part of that cost-saving measure, and come back and revisit it in January. If, if things have changed by then, we can always increase it.
Okay, so
I know it's important to folks, so.
Okay, I'm not sure of the motion. Are we reducing the dollar amount or just the amount of cases per event?
Well, it's going to be the dollar amount through reducing to 5 cases for each event.
Yeah, so the dollar amount be reduced by about 7,000 from 18,000 down to.
See, I hate to reduce this one because not only that, okay, Southgate, 2 years ago, they had a real problem with something and we furnished them about 200 and some cases because they had no drinking water in the city. If we're not prepared for something like this, I think
Director, we are always prepared for that. For example, when the fires at Pico Rivera happened, we brought 100 cases over to the apartment complex. There was another event that, the water district, the little mutual water company, Sativa, we brought 100 cases over there, so we have the flexibility to do that when we have to. And again, those are within
I don't see why we should cut the program if we need that flexibility and we have that to do something.
We always have that flexibility, but I think the program per se, limiting it to 5 cases, has been mentioned before, is a symbolic thing. And again, what Director Oscuri was saying, let's revisit this in January when we get through all the financing and we see where we stand mid-year before we start the following year. So it's basically a reduction for the next 6 months with agreement to revisit in January.
I hate to give up this program. It's been such a success for us.
I agree, sir. We're not trying to give it up. We're
Once we
just trying
start cutting it, we're giving it up.
Then we don't need the 126 percentage. I just don't understand why we're raising rates to do this if we're not going to cut back because we're not bringing in the revenue that we have in the past. We're raising rates. What was the last rate increase 2 years ago, Kevin, approximately?
It was actually, there was 16.8% in July of last year, 8% in January of last year.
So
Before that, none for 5
32%
years.
increase, and now you're doing it again, 2 years later.
Kevin, what are other water agencies?
I'm not done, Director. We are providing water bottles for folks in an emergency. Are we an emergency agency? Do we have the funds for this? I don't have a problem doing this. I think it's a great idea, but do we have the funds for this? That's the question here. If we have the funds for this now, we don't need to raise rates. It's not a matter whether this is a good thing, righteous thing, whatever. It's just, do we have the funds to do it? And we don't. And our customers are going to be the ones that have to eat this increase. Pass that on to their customers. And then if the state comes down and says, cut back on your water sales, they've got to eat that. This is what we need to be taken into consideration.
And the fact that our revenues have decreased, what percentage over the course of the last 3 years?
Dramatically.
Yeah.
Right.
What was our potable water sales?
At
3
one
years
time
ago?
it was 58,000. When I started here 3 years, it was 30,000. It's down to 18, going down to 17 next year and 16 thereafter.
If we can't adjust for the reality that our sales have gone down from 50,000 to 18,000, I don't know what we are doing.
We're raising rates every year 30%. That's what we're doing.
We haven't had one 30% rate increase yet, sir.
Well, there's a 35% increase on the meter charge
Yeah.
today.
But that's not rates. The rates are high enough the way we've raised them. We've raised them 24.6% the last January and July together, and we're coming back again in this July with another recommendation. Comes out overall to about a 20%. So but it is high.
Can I have permission to speak now? Mr. Chairman?
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I think it's very important for us to look at what other water agencies are doing. Central Basin is not in a unique situation. The other neighboring water agencies like Upper San Gabriel has also, the water sales have decreased. I know we're not alone, and I certainly would like to see what other water agencies are doing to address the issue of declining water sales.
Actually, everyone is doing exactly what we're doing. They're struggling with the balance of cost versus rates.
Right. In fact, there have been a number of discussions that I've had with directors from the Metropolitan Water District who have shared that they're changing their rate structures because of the drastic cut in sales. So there are a lot of changes that are going to be coming in the next couple years, and we have to adjust to those, and sometimes it means a raise in water rates. I'm sure that other water agencies have had to increase their water rates, including some of the purveyors that are here before us, and they've had to make their adjustments so that they can maintain their agency functioning, providing the services that they provide with the staffing that they've had historically. And so they've made those adjustments, and I think that we need to do that as well. And sometimes it means
So in summary,
increases.
I thank the directors for the reduction in their travel allowance. There's been a proposal to reduce the bottled water program to 5 per case. There's no desire to revisit that on the part of the... Okay. Then we go down to the charge that we're talking about implementing. We as staff huddled in the back, there are things we could postpone, they'll be painful, or defer. We can reduce costs by, it was 100,000 minus the 20,000, by $80,000. That will enable us to basically, together with the director's thing, have a reduction in $100,000. That will take our DCR up to about 1.20. The question then comes down is, can we get the vote on the 20% handling fee? So the proposal I'm putting before you is if we, as staff, come back, adopt the budget as it is with telling staff to cut another $80,000 in addition to the $20 that the directors have just cut in the director's travel, can we then revisit the 20% handling fee? I believe we could cut that to, we could reduce that to compensate for it if the goal was just to get to 125, otherwise we'll come in a little over.
So that would be altogether about 100,000, you say?
Yeah, if we did 80,000 staff, 20,000 with the directors is 100,000. This was going to raise 242, so that would leave roughly 145 or so to collect. So if we cut this from a 20% handling fee to a 15 or 14%.
I move that motion.
So the motion is what, a 15% handling fee? Okay.
Roll call.
Did you get a second?
Yes,
Yeah.
Director.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
No.
Director Grajeda? Yes, Director Grajeda.
Can abstain.
That's the same as a no vote.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Okay, so we will go into the budget. Okay, this. Are there any other proposals the directors want to do as it stands right now? Then the,
Anybody? Nope.
okay, no other proposals the directors have, then we're going to go to adopting the budget as it is. And the DCR that'll come out to be, well, I can't in good conscience take to the financial community a DCR that is not going to work for this thing. We've got to get it over 120.
Kevin, what is the fallout of the 115, 118% versus 125? Is it going to impact something else?
It impacts the ability to sell bonds and B, the rates that you save.
And what is the negative impact of that in dollars, roughly? Maybe our financial advisor can address
Is that
that.
something you can estimate? That's why you get the big bucks, come on.
Look, let me tell you, since you waited till 12 o'clock anyway. I was just having a conversation with one of our purveyors. They wanted to know if we don't make the decision to go from 118 to 125, what is going to be the impact, the negative impact?
Sure. I'm Robert Porterfield and Rolap. There's two issues. As the general manager pointed out a few minutes ago, last year you had a budget that showed adequate coverage. You're going to come in at about 105. Had you had a larger cushion, perhaps you would have met your debt service coverage ratio of 115. So part of it is an expectation. When you don't have enough of a cushion built into the budget, a change in revenues or a change in expenditures could negatively impact the financial performance for the year. The debt service coverage ratio is one of the primary metrics that the rating agencies look at and that investors look at to judge your coverage. To judge your credit. So the higher your debt service coverage ratio is in your budget, in your forecasts, the more let's say investors will like and credit rating agencies will like those projections. To the extent you build in a very thin coverage, which I think is what the proposal is, it becomes a little bit more skeptical that you'll be able to meet coverage in the future. Your history in the last 2 years has been rather negative for the credit markets. So, with the proposal that we're working on to refund the 8s, the 10s, it could impact the district's debt service by a significant amount, $50,000 to $75,000 a year or more.
Okay. And does that also impact the idea of the lockbox? Don't have a better term for that.
Well, we
also?
think the lockbox kind of cures a couple of things. It should give the investment community and the rating agency community comfort that irrespective of what the coverage turns out to be, bondholders will get paid, which is sort of the ultimate credit factor in all this.
So then theoretically, the $100,000 savings that we were suggesting, $80,000 plus the 20, it could be $150,000 or $170,000, because if we have it at 118, you said the negative impact because of the uncertainty in the market could equal roughly about $75,000 a year, because the rates are not going to be as favorable.
Correct, but we're asking the budget to be adopted based on the current circumstance, not with the refunding and the defeasance taken into account. Those haven't been done yet. So we think it's wise that it be done based on current debt service numbers.
Is the lockbox idea predicated on it has to come with a 126 percentage, or is the lockbox idea solely on its own merits?
It's solely on its own merits.
But that's also, the whole idea of, the whole notion of the lockbox was to give enough level of certainty to the markets.
Correct.
That we can enjoy having a better rates. That was in the presentation.
That's correct.
So it all kind of goes into the way of the district being able to enjoy having lower rates, hence saving more money in the debt service.
Well, I would look at it slightly different. It doesn't matter what we're bringing in. The standby charge pays the debt, and all that is going to the lockbox. No matter what happens, that's all going to the lockbox, and that's paying the debt. So no matter what happens to the district, as that money comes in, because it's going to the lockbox, the creditors know they will be paid no matter what.
That's our expectation, our hope. That's only for the first 5 or the next 5 years, however.
Yes, but we're going to be doing a lot of work in the next 5 years to try to sort that out.
Any other questions for Mr. Poole? Nice job.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Does the budget have to be approved?
So, with regard to the budget options, option 4 is our recommendation as the preferred option. I believe both option 1s, 2, and 3 really aren't either politically or fiscally viable at this time for the district. We recommend a DCR 125 versus we're at 118 now. With the $20,000, that really doesn't move it more than 3/4 of a point. It's about 30 to 35,000 for each point of the DCR. So to get over 120, we'd have to basically reduce it by a total of 100,000. So that would get us to 120, still not to 125. And again, I want to emphasize, our water rates are increased only as required. We're not doing these for frivolous reasons. This is a very tight budget when you go through it. Having said that, if the board wishes me to reduce the budget by an additional 80,000, I will find a way to do that and not have anything in that has to come back for board action. Others, as general manager has discretion within the budget on certain things. Others require a vote of the board. But I would like to take a DCR of at least 120 plus into the financial markets discussion.
Kevin, I'm okay with that proposal. Also with a caveat that we are going to come back in January as part of a robust, and I mean it robust, discussion regarding other cost-saving measures. Everything on the table, including the health, the HRA accounts.
And I recommend on those we do what we propose, which is to deal with them in the first or second quarter of the fiscal year as opposed to the third, because they take time. So we'll implement them in the first quarter, probably September. That'll be a good time. We'll have a board workshop on benefits and start it off that way.
With that caveat
Ian, does that
and
work with you?
the additional $80,000 in savings that you're gonna come up with.
Okay.
Did I hear that right?
That I will come up with an additional 80,000 in savings.
And the 20,000 that we just.
The 20,000 that
That's
directors.
100,000. And looking in the first quarter at more cost-saving measures.
Yeah, we're going to start.
including The health account.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to downplay, this is a transition year. It's an important year financially because we are restructuring our finance. Between this and proposals for 2020, we should be able to be at a more sustainable level. But we are still looking at, in 2020's fiscal year, a total loss of the LRP subsidy and a promise that there'll be no more replenishment water bought, which is about $1 million hit still. So we're preparing for that already. It's not going to be a surprise. So with that, right, so the proposal was that instruct the general manager to reduce expenditures by $80,000 in the final budget. You are not adopting you're not adopting a 125 debt coverage ratio, and you're not adopting any markup whatsoever on the RTS and the capacity charge pass-through. Is that the proposal?
I second that.
Someone's got to make it.
Yeah, I make that as a motion, Kevin.
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
It is a motion.
I made that as a motion.
Okay.
I second.
Can someone repeat the motion before we vote on it? The
So
board
we have
secretary.
Kevin has promised to come back to the board with an additional $80,000.
Excuse me, I'm not coming back to the board with it. I will adopt,
Sorry,
I will
to
reduce the adopted budget by
Reduce the adopted
80,000.
budget by an additional $80,000. And with the caveat to come back the first quarter with additional savings.
No, excuse me, the first quarter, we would come back to discuss the benefits program, and come back in the third quarter to begin the discussion on additional cost savings in the future.
Well, now, is this going to satisfy the bond people, what we're talking about right now?
It'll give us a debt coverage ratio of 120.7. So they'll call it 121. It's not 125. They'll be happier than a 118, not as happy as 125. Is that an appropriate
You're not
assessment?
smiling.
Yeah.
Roll call.
Before we do the roll call, this is assuming one of the three options passes today, correct?
Well, you're voting on option 4 right now.
Okay.
Option 4 is the preferred option, and we're putting up that includes the rates on there.
But it doesn't include the 20% increase
Right.
All right.
on RTS.
So we have a motion and a second, is that?
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
No.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
No?
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Did not.
Okay, so the budget does not pass. Director Vasquez, could I ask you how I could make it so it'd be more palatable to you?
What about the other no?
I'm going to ask the other one who voted no.
Start there.
I will start there. Director Gedney, is there any way you will vote for a rate increase today?
Earlier this year, we had a discussion in January, I believe, and I made a comment and drew an analogy, and I'll just be a little more frank today. We have a certain staffing level. We are structured to do a number of different things. We've been sitting here the last 4 months talking about the things we do, whatever benefits we might provide, and the mission of this district. And it's my opinion and the opinion of the folks that appointed me onto this board that we need to go back and have a hard discussion and look at the structure of this district. We have primarily one mission, and that's to wheel potable water down to the utilities. We brought on other things that we do. I don't believe this budget is fair in terms of what the mission of this district is. That's why I voted no.
May I ask you a blunt question, and is there any rate increase we propose that you'd be prepared to vote on?
Not without discussion of budget cuts in terms of staffing.
And we have cut staff and cut budget for the last year, and none of that matters.
It does matter. It's a very good start. I don't think it's sufficient, though.
Okay, that's your opinion.
Okay, so
Director Vasquez, we now heard from Director Gedney.
Yeah, I don't have a comment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything I can do to come up with a budget that we can pass today?
I don't think that you have a vote on this board, so I don't think so.
Well, we obviously have 4 votes.
Yeah.
so we're not going to have a budget?
Not today.
You understand the delicate situation we're in here.
There are other folks that
The other 4 voted for
should be
it,
a
ma'am.
discussion
Yeah.
amongst the entire board.
Well, please
Yeah,
feel
thank
free
you.
to have it. Director Apodaca, would you lead a discussion among the board members on how to make this?
Oh, I'm in favor of the proposal. I do it because it's necessary. On the other hand, I discussed it with my colleague, Mr. Hawkins, and he too understands, but at the same time, he feels that, again, that we're giving more and more and more, and it becomes more and more difficult. And I think Mr. Gray understood that because we were talking about that too, so I don't know where we're at on this.
And again, I'm simply confused, but that's my normal state of affairs.
But, Mr. President, we have to have a budget. We have to have a reasonable budget. I think we have put forward, after going back and forth, a proposal that is reasonable. It's not ideal. It's reasonable. It was a compromise. We had 2 no votes. One of the board members explained the reasoning and rationale, not that I agree with him, for his not approving this. I would certainly like to hear the other side to see if there is anything else we can do to compromise to have a budget.
And I want to make sure you understood, Director, that the proposal I had for cuts would not affect the directors in any way. It had to be within stuff that is within my
This
purview
is-
as a general manager.
Yeah, this is not about directors for me. This is about this agency.
Yes, ma'am.
And I believe that some of us directors have done a lot in the area of cutting and compromising. And I believe that this should be a team effort, and either I would love to see everyone support this. And especially in light of all of the compromises that have already been made by many of us. So if we can get everyone to support this, then I can join. Because I believe that we have done our part to make the drastic cuts that were necessary to try to meet this.
So Director Vasquez, with all due respect, let me understand that. You're going to vote no, so as a result of that, we're not going to have a budget because somebody else is voting no?
Well, no, that's not the case. It's that I don't agree with the process. I believe that in this discussion, my understanding is that if we agree to make certain compromises and support some of the cuts that were put forth, that we would all join in supporting the approval of the budget.
So if we all join, we're not going to have a budget, so it defeats the whole purpose of compromising.
Right, exactly.
So
I mean, I supported cutting the education programs. I supported, cutting the director travel, which doesn't impact me.
understand that,
And it hasn't impacted me because I don't travel on Central Basin dime. But I believe that my colleagues have an obligation to do the job, which was why I didn't support it initially. But I did support it in the end because, again, it was a compromise.
Right.
And so a large part of this process for me has been to compromise and to support things that I don't believe, should be cut. But I don't feel like that has been the case for everyone. Everyone has not, well, most of us have, but not everyone has done their part to to join in the compromise. And so if we can all join in supporting this proposal, I can...
When you say not joining in the compromise, what do you exactly mean by that?
Well, we have Director Getney that, isn't willing to support the budget because he says he disagrees.
Whatever reasons.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Just like as I have said that I disagree with other proposals that are being made, but I supported it because, this is, again, an effort on behalf of all of the board members. So just as you expect me to change my vote, then I would expect you also to look at some of the other no votes to change their vote as well.
No, that's not what I suggested. I'm just trying to frame the question in here. Look, you are voting no because Getney is voting no. As a result, we're not going to have a budget.
No, I'm voting no because I don't agree with the budget. I don't agree with the drastic cuts
Which part of the budget
that
you
are
don't
being
agree
made.
with?
Excuse me, point of clarification, I'm sorry, John. You're not going to get your budget today, Kevin.
Well, actually,
No, we are having a conversation.
It's going nowhere.
may I just make a suggestion?
Don't rely on me for the vote. Just my
Director
point
Vasquez,
is
let
other
me
people are
just
not
point
gonna be willing
out,
to
your
compromise.
point is very well taken, and I think it's something Director Hawkins had talked about too. And yet we saw the spirit of compromise just come up. We saw Director Oscui and Director Grajeda just vote for the budget that includes a significant rate increase. They were voting for that, which included a 20%, and Director Hawk. So I think the vote was there, other than one director who, for whatever reason, doesn't feel that he's empowered to vote for a rate increase. Has not since he's been on the
I
board.
changed my vote, Kevin, and I voted yes because I thought it was a good compromise solution.
Exactly.
Not because someone else voted no or yes.
And I think Director,
I don't think it's a good compromise solution.
do you have an alternative,
Do you
Director?
have a suggestion then?
I would like to see us support the increase that is required for us to meet the 125% ratio that the financial folks are asking of us. That's what I would like to see.
So would you support a budget that is exactly what we proposed right here, except we make up the 4% difference in the debt coverage ratio that is missing, which is a total of about $120,000 with a half the size of the capacity charge?
You mentioned that this approval would mean that it would be a 15% approval, but you requested a 20% approval. So I would like to see us come together on the 20% so that the financial folks their request is being satisfied. That's what I would like to see, which is the motion that Director Hawkins made, but failed.
I'm sorry,
Wasn't that the motion you made, Director Hawkins?
The motion that he ultimately made was the compromise solution to stay at 120 plus 127, close to 121. That was his motion.
I'm not sure that was, what was Director Hawkins' motion?
The original, when we first did the first one, was option 1.
Right,
Then when we came back to reconsider, it was a 15%
yeah.
15% what?
handling fee.
Okay, instead of the 20%.
Right.
And
So I support the 20%, which is what's required, what the financial folks are asking of us. That's what I would prefer.
again, my point is that the financial folks are asking that we achieve the debt coverage ratio. If we can do some of it by building on the cuts that the board already approved with the 20,000 and saying we can find another 80,000, that gives us 100. If we then go back to the 15% or whatever the exact amount is, that raises the exact amount to get us to 125. Do we have a calc on that, Andrew? Are you paying attention?
I was going to write down.
Okay. What is the...
At 11.65%, that raises about $141,000. That combined with the $20,000 the board just approved for the travel allowance, plus the $80 from the general manager, would get us to 125. So instead of a 20%, it'd be 11.65. It'd raise about 141. Okay.
Thank you. Perfect. Yes, sir.
So because we've been dealing with numbers quite a bit, let me understand this. 20 plus 80, that's 100,000. That equals to, with a RTD of 11.6?
Yeah, look at the screen.
Okay.
Leave this, everything out.
Okay. So with 11.65, instead of the 20% that we have been discussing, we can hit the 125?
Correct.
So
Raises $141,000.
shouldn't we all be happy and vote yes then? Well, except some of us that fundamentally have an issue with it. Does that, Director Vasquez, does that satisfy your condition of
I'd like to
100.5%?
ask the financial folks, is that going to satisfy the request that you're making?
Sure, our recommendation is trying to reach 125. Whether you get there by reducing expenses or raising rates, we're indifferent to that.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Kevin, you have on this screen, or somebody has, I should say, additional reductions. What are those?
The 80,000 that
Yeah, what is that?
I'm going to look in the budget and I'll move studies and cut things that I have. Those are things that we need to do, but I'm going to put them off till January and hopefully we can find the money by then through increased revenues or they don't get done. But we have, for example, a capital improvement study that has to be done. We need to do it in this district to prioritize our expenditures. We haven't done it for 5 years. So there are things like that that we can move around a little bit and I'll find other things that I'll move that'll get us to that point. So out of the entire budget, I will find $80,000 in cuts.
Okay, but we're just seeing this today. This just happened today, right?
It hasn't happened yet. It's an offer I made to the board.
It's a discussion, but we don't know specifically what that is.
No, you don't. And frankly, once the board... What?
It's something you're offering.
And I will do because you'll see the final numbers that come out on it. It'll be 80,000 less is what you'll authorize is 80,000 less, and therefore what I will have a budget to manage is 80,000 less.
So we had a motion that failed. That motion with the caveat of the 11.65% is going to get us to 125%. The originator of the motion, would you like to do that again so we can get a second and get another vote, please?
Okay. Tell me what I did before.
It's actually, what they're voting on is rather than the 15% is an 11.65% with respect to the handling fee. In addition to, with the caveat of coming back the first quarter to look at benefits and coming back on the third quarter for additional savings. No increases in capacity charge?
No, the increase in capacity charge would now be over of 11.65% would be the proposal of it. Capacity in RTS would be 11.65%, but there would be a budget reduction by the general manager at his discretion of the overall budget on things that are with his control but not within board purview of $80,000. So that the total...
I would make that a motion. Is that what you're...
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
I'll make that as a motion then.
And I'll second that.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
No.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Osculi?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes?
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great.
Doug, smile.
No, he's got it good. Yeah, okay. What is the recommendation here? Oh, okay. This is also the budget then, approval? Do you want to? Yes. And I want to go over here and read it.
So the numbers have changed a little bit. Now that you've given us guidance, items 1 through 4 and items 1 and 2 changed. Item 1 is going to be 12,000, 2 million, I'm sorry.
12 million.
Let me start all over.
Yeah.
Item number 1, the amount of net revenues is going to be $12,227,346. Number 2, approving net expenses of $9,933,446. 530. Items 3 and 4 remain the same. These 4 items get us to the 125% that the board just approved. Item number 5 approves funding of 20.21 FTEs. Item number 6 approves the use of pass-through revenues expenses, knowing that they are estimated and will vary. And number 7 is to authorize staff to process the budget activity for the fiscal year 18-19 in accordance with established law, the administrative code in effect by the district, and all relevant guidelines. So that would be the recommended motion, those 7 items as amended.
Did we just cover that? You're just explaining the last motion, or is...
You did. Typically, we've just done this in finality to include the specific items. Like number 6 wasn't as specifically addressed in the motion. Yes.
Okay. You require a motion?
That's staff's recommendation.
Move to approve as recommended by staff? Second.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
No.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Oscui?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Does that mean we have a budget?
Yes, sir.
Item 15.
Item number 15. This agenda item relates to the fixed payment accounts, creation of these accounts, AKA the lockbox. If you recall, on May 10th, we came to the board with this being a information item because we still had negotiation, and so we are happy to say that we feel like we've come to an agreement with all related parties. This also was discussed at April's board meeting, and if you recall, this creation of the fixed payment accounts or lockbox will enable the district to refinance the district's debt due to missing the DCR in prior years. How the lockbox works is that the money would be deposited with the trustee in November and April timeframes, and the trustee would pay interest, debt service in February, and principal on August 1st, and the remaining funds left in the lockbox that's filled by the standby charge that the county pays us would be remitted to the district on August 2nd. This is a temporary cash flow impact. However, as our financial advisor has previously stated at this meeting, we feel this enhances the credit that we can present to the markets. This is effective immediately, not subject to change by the district, and in the future, when debt service exceeds $3.3 million, the district's existing per CFS meter charge would be deposited monthly into the lockbox or standby, the fixed payment account. So with that, this actually has 2 agenda items, both this item and the succeeding agenda item. The succeeding agenda item, I'll talk briefly about it now, but we'll go to that in a minute. If passed by the board on this agenda item, the Financing Corp also has to approve because they've been involved in the financing. So with this item here represents the Central Basin Municipal Water District approving the resolution and the related attachments and agreements for revisions to the debt indenture documents. And the other one, which is a payment account, is attached. And that is the recommendation.
Move to approve recommendation by staff?
Second. That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Abstain.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Schooley?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes.
Which leads us to the next agenda item. Attachments are exactly the same. It's just that the Financing Corporation, separate legal entity, was involved with the issuance of COPs that relates to the 2008 and 2010. So the recommendation is a separate resolution and also for the Financing Corporation to approve amendments to the indenture agreements for the 2008 and 2010 agreements.
Move to approve, Mr. President.
Roll call.
Director Chacon? Director Gedney?
Abstain.
Director Grajeda?
Yes.
Director Hawkins?
Yes.
Director Schooley?
Yes.
Director Vasquez?
Yes.
President Apodaca?
Yes. Item 16, discussion to restructure committee.
Excuse me, Maggie, I'm having a senior moment. Did we not agree to, we didn't agree to here, Director Vasquez?
No.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
So again, good morning, directors. So I'll be presenting this item here. So over the last few months, we've had discussions internally about creating efficiencies with our committee process. And just in the last 5 months alone, we've had situations in which we've either had to cancel the committee for a lack of committee items or either a lack of quorum. So currently, we do have a total of 5 committees, as listed in your memorandum. And we are recommending that you consider combining these committees. In this case, we would consider combining Water Resources Committee with the Communications Committee, the Administration Committee with the Finance Committee, and keeping the Engineering and Operations Committee as a standalone committee. This would make it a total of 3 committees. At this time, this is only an information item. We're coming to you for feedback and input on how to proceed with this item. If the board were to agree to move forward with this item, we would come back next month with revisions to the administrative code and make these effective July 1st.
I think it's a great idea, Maggie. Will there be any cost savings here? Do you know?
With respect to processing committee packets as well as FedExing to the directors, yes, sir.
But not necessarily due to stipends paid.
No, with respect, the directors have a total of approximately 55 meetings per the administrative code that they can attend.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm going to go back to the original thinking behind the 5. We all have different jobs besides this. We don't live off of this. And it was to keep our meetings down to 1 hour so that we could schedule. And if we start going to this, we're going to start going over those time limits and all this, and it's going to make it harder for directors to come to meetings because they can't count how long, because they still have another job or they still have someplace else to go. Where this way, I don't think any of our meetings ever go over an hour because we have 5 different meetings on it. And to cancel one, I don't see a problem with if there isn't enough information or material for that particular meeting, it can just be canceled. So no, I would like to stay the way it is.
I think efficiency is the name of the game. If we judge it by the past number of meetings that we've had, the number of cancellations that we have to make, and some meetings that quite frankly last about 10-15 minutes, no more than that. And the fact that Director Hawkins, even though you may have to spend an hour or 15, let's say 15 or 20 minutes more if you combine this, if you in totality look at it, you will be saving time because of the travel time and everything else that is included in there. So I think, again, efficiency is not a bad idea. It's going to be a more efficient operation. As we've heard, it's going to be less work for the folks that are here. And now we have less number of people that we've had in the past, so we have to create those opportunities.
Any other feedback, directors?
Well, I just, can I speak? Okay, just want to make sure. I've been to other water agencies, other water boards, from the WRD to West Basin to Upper San Gabriel. There's a reason why they're all structured this way, and I believe it needs to, it should stay that way. It gives us enough time to really get into the meat of issues. I know that my communications meeting, they last sometimes up to 2 hours. And I attend the Metropolitan Water District Board meetings. I have to take time from my work schedule to be there all day because we have our committee meetings there consecutively. And I know that Mr. Gedney can concur with that because he's usually there all day from either 9, to 3 or 4 or 5 sometimes. And I believe we need to have we should keep it the way that it is because we need to have the time to really get into the issues. Yeah.
Since we're going to have future discussions, could you, I'm sorry, this is additional work, sort of like a recap of the last year, how many meetings, the type of meetings the number of meetings that we've had for each one of these committees, roughly how much, how long have they lasted, and how many of them have been canceled? That gives us a good...
I can certainly give you a list of how long the meetings have lasted, do some of that research for you, provide that.
So at least we will have some data when we speak about these.
Certainly.
Yeah, and my understanding is that other water agencies do it the same way, so we can also get some data about what other water agencies do with respect to these committee meetings. Thank you.
Any other input, directors?
I concur with my colleagues.
Okay, we can certainly come back next month with some additional information with respect to how long some of these meetings have lasted, as well as to what other agencies are having and continue to have this discussion, if that works.
May I suggest, because we're going to go into a closed session and folks want to get on with their business, so we can do a few items out of order, wrap up the open session, general manager's report, director's report, and director's comments, and then go back to the closed session and then come back and close it quickly.
We can do that.
Mr. President?
Yes. General Counsel, do you have anything?
Nothing other than the closed session here.
General Manager?
They gave me one, here it is. The Central Basin Caucus is taking a break over the summer, return in the fall. We'll also be meeting with Upper District and see about potential changes to the caucus presentations and that, so. That's it.
Is that it?
And I do want to thank the board members for their work on this budget. It's a tough process today, and so a lot of directors make compromise in leadership, and I thank you all very much.
Director Gandy?
No additional comments. Thank you.
Director Sui?
No comments. Are we going to get the director's report on meetings and conferences?
Well, where you go along with
Oh, yeah. No comments, sir.
No comment.
I'm the one that would say a few words about contract cities. I was there with 2 of my other colleagues, and of course our general manager and staff, and it was very successful. Personally, I met with the cities of Whittier, and I met with other cities that were there, and it was very, very beneficial. Director Vasquez?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up a document so that I can report. I don't typically do this, but I do want to report. Let me see. On some of the other meetings that I have attended. I had a water education tour about 2 weekends ago. We went up to Hoover Dam. We had about, I think maybe 26 individuals that were a part of that trip. About 7 of them were from the Purveyor community, and I was really happy to see that they're beginning to join us in larger numbers. Let me see. I have another water education tour that is scheduled for June 20th through 30th, and that was a special trip that was approved by the chairman of the Metropolitan Water District Board. That specific tour is targeting elected officials in the Central Basin District, and we're going to be focusing on a discussion about the California water fix. To date, we have about a little over 40 people that have registered for that, and Kelsey has been very busy, working on not only that trip, but some of the the other trips that we have scheduled. There are a lot of things going on in my district. There's a water quality issue in the Sativa Water District. There have been several town hall meetings to talk about the matter, and I know that Kevin Hunt has extended a helping hand to the Sativa Water District in providing whatever support we can offer to help address the issue that they have. The LA County Sanitation District, I was at their meeting last week. They had a big presentation about one of their clear water projects that they have been working on. I attended the purveyor meeting, which we had, and where we discussed, our staff gave a presentation about the financial status of the district. And then I have met with State Senator Steve Bradford and also Assemblyman Mike Gibson's office to talk about potential partnerships and assistance for the Sativa Water District. I've also met with Luis Cetina from the Metropolitan Water District as we continue to outreach to all of the cities that we represent on the Metropolitan Water District to talk about the California water fix and the impact that it's going to have on our local communities. We also have had the Metropolitan Water District directors caucus meeting with Tammy and Kevin Hunt, which we continue to host every month. And this last weekend, I was, as I mentioned, at the City of Southgate's Veterans Affairs program, and I gave away bottled water and some other information about our conservation programs. And I'll just end there, but my point in talking about the meetings that I've attended is that there is a lot of work to be done by the directors and our staff here at the Central Basin. I think we are very relevant and very important to our region, and I think the work that we're doing, each of us do, either as a staff member, as a general manager, or as a board member, reflects that. Thank you.
Director Hawkins, you want to comment about the real estate committee that we're on?
Well, the real estate committee, we're looking at what's going on with this building and trying to get some ideas what we can do and what we can't do here. The other thing is I attended the contract cities, and I was happy to be able to explain some of the stuff that were going on, because I found out some of the elected officials were not getting a straight scoop on what was going on here at Central Basin and how we had to cut. And when I started explaining them what we were doing and why, they said, we went through the same thing. The last 2 years, we've been doing it. But they were just told that we were raising rates and we weren't balancing our budget and we were doing all these things. And so hopefully I got a bunch of them straightened out as what is really going on here. But without those kind of meetings, you don't hear that. So that's why it's so important that we attend those meetings to make sure they're getting the right information. That's my comment.
Any other comments, anybody?
Yeah, I do have one final comment, and this has to do with the earlier request for representation that I submitted. Just to give a little bit of background, on March the 8th, Hughes and his lawyer submitted a request detailing the issues, including the fact that there's a legal dispute. There is currently a pending legal dispute that he submitted a request to this agency for this board to consider. And he explained in his letter to the district that the legal dispute arose in the course and scope of me carrying out my duties as a director for the Central Basin Water District. And at that time, the request that he submitted was rejected by our general counsel. I'm not sure if it came before the board, but I did want to make a note that his request was rejected, and so that led to my request and the letter that I submitted for the second time to the General Counsel. I believe my attorney made that submission about a week ago, and that was rejected as well. And I'm requesting indemnification and representation on the matter. And I'm a little concerned that the matter hasn't been brought to the board. I would like the matter to be brought for consideration before the entire board. Thank you. I also find a little, strange that every other director that has ever submitted a request to be represented on a matter has always been brought before the board of directors without without needing to have a vote by other board members. So I hope that I'm not being treated differently here, but I would like to make the request for this matter to be agendized at the next regular board meeting. Thank you.
Directors have the right to do that, so. And I might add that if we'd been notified ahead of time, I might have been able to contact the insurance company to see if the insurance company is willing to provide indemnification. That's what it comes down to. As a board don't, so but I'll do that prior to the next board meeting, so.
Point of clarification, we're off the agenda. None of this was on the agenda. This is just comments, so.
Right.
Yeah. Closed session?
Closed session, yes.
Yes. Item 17 is conference with legal counsel in closed session regarding existing litigation pursuant to paragraph 1 of subdivision D of section 54956.9, City of Huntington Park versus Kevin Hunt et al., Los Angeles Superior Court, case BS 169612. And I wish to note that the Brown Act prohibits the disclosure of confidential information acquired in a closed session by any person present and offers various remedies to address willful breaches of confidentiality. These include injunctive relief, disciplinary action against an employee, and referral of a member of the legislative body to the grand jury. It is incumbent upon all those attending lawful closed sessions to protect the confidentiality of those discussions. Only the legislative body acting as a body may agree to divulge confidential closed session information. As regards attorney-client privilege communications, the entire body is the holder of the privilege, and only majority vote of the entire body can authorize the waiver of the privilege. Okay, the board met in closed session to discuss existing litigation, case of City of Huntington Park versus Kevin Hunt, et cetera, et al., Los Angeles Superior Court, case BS 169612, and there was no reportable action.
Meeting's adjourned, sorry.